Curtain on a world most of us only ever hear about in the news. We're talking about cyber response.
You know, we hear all the scary words: breach, hack, data leak. But what does that fight actually look like, moment to moment, for the people on the digital front lines? What's really going on?
Well, I can tell you it's not some lone wolf in a hoodie. It's this high-stakes battle of wits, fought by a dedicated team with a plan. So to really see how it all goes down, we're going to follow a fictional security team at a company we'll call Acme Inc. We're going to watch them navigate a full-blown crisis, step by step.
And here's the thing that might surprise you. The response to an attack doesn't actually begin when the attack happens. No, it starts way, way before that. It all begins with preparation.
You see, for most security teams, their playbook is guided by a framework from NIST. That's the National Institute for Standards and Technology. And it breaks the whole thing down into 4 key phases, starting right there with preparation. This is basically their roadmap for how to get through the chaos. Now, this preparation isn't just about buying the fanciest new security software. It's all about people and process. Teams run these drills. They're called tabletop exercises, where they literally role play a crisis. Think of it like a fire drill, but for a cyber attack. It's all about finding the holes in your plan before a real emergency blows them wide open. And right from the get-go, this phase is full of tough calls. You think, okay, there's a security patch for a known problem, you install it. Obvious, right? Well, not so fast. A patch can sometimes break other critical systems or, get this, even create brand new vulnerabilities. So, what do you do when you can't just apply the patch? You use something called a compensating control. Honestly, just think of it as a strategic workaround. It doesn't fix the root problem, but it puts another barrier up, another lock on the door, buying the team precious time to figure out a real permanent solution. But look, no matter how well you prepare, a really determined attacker might still find a way through. And that brings us to phase 2. The moment the team gets that first little clue, that first inkling that something is very, very wrong. This is where someone like Tristan, an analyst, becomes the hero of the story. His job is to constantly sift through mountains of data, hunting for what the industry calls an indicator of compromise, or an IOC. You can think of it as a digital breadcrumb, a tiny clue that a security breach might have just happened.
And an IOC isn't always some big blaring alarm. It can be a really subtle anomaly, like this one. A single user account running 100 commands in just 10 seconds. I mean, come on, no human being can type that fast. That is a massive telltale sign that an account has probably been hijacked by an automated script. It's a tiny thread, but Tristan knows he's got to pull on it, and he's got to do it fast.
But that brings up a really critical question, doesn't it? I mean, to spot something that's unusual, you first have to know what usual is supposed to look like. And that's the job of Lucian, the security engineer. Way before any attack, he's the one who establishes a baseline, a super detailed picture of what normal network traffic looks like day to day. Because without that baseline, all those fancy detection tools, they're basically useless. You can't find the needle if you have no idea what the haystack is supposed to look like in the first place. So how'd the attacker even get this far? Well, they tend to follow a pretty predictable path, often mapped out by this thing called the cyber kill chain. It starts with reconnaissance. They scope out their target. Then they weaponize an exploit and deliver it, maybe in a phishing email. Now, based on that clue Tristan just found, the attacker is already deep inside the network, probably at stage 6, command and control. The race is officially on. Okay, an active threat is confirmed. The mission now shifts big time. It's no longer about detection, it's about defense. This is phase 3, fighting back. The clock is absolutely ticking now. The first priority for Luca, another engineer on the team, isn't to destroy the threat. Not yet. It's to contain it. So his first move is to immediately isolate the infected computer from the rest of the network. It's like a digital quarantine, and it's designed to stop the bleeding, to limit the blast radius. But this creates a whole other headache. Sometimes, taking action can be what they call an inhibitor to remediation. So, for example, let's say the threat is spreading through an old file sharing service. The team might have to shut that entire service down for everyone. And suddenly, the fix that contains the threat is also grinding the whole business to a halt. Every single decision is this high-stakes balancing act between security and just getting work done. This kind of chaos is exactly why getting security right from the start is so vital. The best defenses always rely on multiple layers of authentication, using factors we all see in our own lives. Something you know, like a password. Something you have, like your phone or a smart card. And something you are, like your fingerprint. The more of those you have, the harder you make it for an attacker to cause this much chaos. So, once the threat is finally kicked out and the systems are back online, you might think the fight is over. It's not even close. This brings us to the final and, maybe the most important phase of the whole response. Now, the team has to document everything. And this incident report, it's not just a bunch of boring paperwork. It is a critical learning tool. The executive summary tells the bosses what happened in plain English. The recommendations, that's all about lessons learned, so this doesn't happen again. And the timeline and evidence sections preserve every single technical detail for future analysis. It's the official record. And to make sure those lessons actually stick, you've got to measure them. That's where Danny comes in. Her job is to track key metrics, like mean time to remediate, which is just a fancy way of asking, how long did it take us to fix this? Tracking that number helps the whole organization see if their response is actually getting faster and more effective over time. And how long do they have to hang on to all this information? Well, for U.S. federal agencies, the answer is a minimum of 3 years. Every report, every piece of evidence, it gets archived. It becomes part of the organization's institutional memory. So in the end, it really all boils down to a pretty simple formula. A threat, like a hacker, plus a vulnerability, like that unpatched software we talked about, that equals risk. The entire incident response process, the whole thing, is about managing that risk. Which of course leaves us with one final thought. Knowing all this, how resilient is your own digital life?